Our presentation on the main causes and effects of political revolutions. Political revolutions generally have similar causes and effects, which is why many of political revolutions panned out in these ways.
The causes were heavy taxes were placed that the people could not afford. People wanted freedom economically, and wealth was distributed unequally, and the people wanted to address the dilemma. People wanted to overthrow oppressive leaders.
Basically, their rights were not being met, and their needs weren't being met either, and their king was not willing to agree.
Right. Causes of the French Revolution was that people were not represented equally, and their needs were not willing to be met. Political conflict was the monarchy was abusing its power and did not give most people basic right. The middle class was the class that felt the most taken advantage of. Not only did the third class not have equal rights, the king did not listen to their complaints and refused to address the issue growing rapidly in France. The majority of the people demanded for financial, political, and social change of aspects.
Tsar Nicholas II was the leader during the Russian Revolution of 1917. He had absolute power. The Russian people were upset with their government because their government was corrupted and inefficient. The Russians were no longer a military match, and they had little food to feed all their people.
The main cause of the American Revolution relates back to general causes of political revolutions. The main cause of the American Revolution was that the people felt misused and misrepresented. In America, the colonies had their own distribution of power and wealth, however, they did not have a general established government. In England, the king decided to take control of this, and he established unfair taxes and rules. This left the American people struggling, and they decided to no longer stand for their unfair representation and the king's misuse of power.
The two main causes of the Mexican Revolution of 1910 was agriculture and the living conditions. Fewer than 1,000 families owned land, and a man named Luis Terrazas had 7 million acres. This was hard for the average person because he was not able to own his own business and had to work for another family in order to make money. For the living conditions, 1/4 of the population was literate, and 29%, only 29% of children lived due to the lack of nutrition and no access to medication. The rich became richer and the poor became poorer. And overall, all the classes just wanted to have their own freedom.
Effects of political revolution. The general effect of political revolutions may vary. However, in most cases, the effect of political revolutions are
the merging of a new type of government, a treaty or agreement between the former ruler. The former ruler may have been killed during or shortly after the revolt. Okay, effects of the French Revolution. The people of France were overthrew and executed Louis XVI. The First Republic was established after the monarchy was ended. People were now free from their king and inequality. The path of economic crisis began to be constructed.
Tsar Nicholas II was the leader during the Russian Revolution of 1917. He had absolute power. The Russian people were upset with their government because their government was corrupted and inefficient. The Russians were no longer a military match, and they had little food to feed all their people.
The effects of the American Revolution was that the power of the colonies in English diminished once the American colonies claimed their independence from England. This caused the people in England to question the power of the king, and they decided that he was unfit to rule. However, they did not overthrow him. In America, a new government emerged and was very different from the one in England. The people were now equally represented in their constitutional republic that was established by the Articles of Confederation.
There are several effects of the Mexican Revolution. One interesting story is that former President Porfirio Diaz locked up Francisco Madero. The people then revolted and elected Madero to be the new president. This led the government as a dictatorship to a free living life where everyone had equal power. The people gained land for agriculture, and they finally gained their freedom.
This is an overall sequencing map on the American Revolution. First, taxes were imposed on the colonies, which was because Britain was in large debt and needed money. Then the colonies began to argue over the taxes and refused to pay them because they were outrageously high. Next, the Boston Massacre occurred, which was when 5 people were killed by British soldiers, causing the people to grow angrier and reject the British rule. Afterwards, Britain removed most taxes but leaves taxes on tea. This causes the colonies to grow angrier due to the fact that all the taxes were not removed and they used tea on a daily. Next, the Boston Tea Party occurred because the colonists wanted to show their anger toward Britain by dumping the tea in the ocean. Afterwards, the Intolerable Acts placed because Britain thought that it was a well punishment for the Boston Tea Party. Afterwards, the First Continental Congress met, which was when people from the colonies made a response in an attempt to rid all of the unfair taxes imposed on them by Britain. And then finally, the battle at Lexington and Concord signifies the start of the American Revolution.
Our overall decision of why political revolutions occurred.
The main reasons political revolutions occur are because the people of that nation or country are not being represented. Not only are their needs not being met, but the ruler is not willing to cooperate with them.
Whether it was heavy taxes that were placed on the people that could not be afforded, freedom was not available economically, the uneven distribution of wealth, or that the people's rules was very oppressive, the people were not happy in any of these revolutions.
In order to prevent this from happening is by listening to the majority of the people's needs. The people needs to be consulted with or consent and have equal representation.